My husband watched me almost die during childbirth, then made my recovery even worse, so I'm about to do something that will make his life way worse. My husband, 38 male, and I, 38 female, have been together for 15 years, married for 5 years. We have our ups and downs, but it has been rocky for the last year. Lots of arguments with some good times in between. I found out I was pregnant with our second child last September, and we were both excited. My first pregnancy was pretty hard, and I ended up delivering 6 weeks early for severe preeclampsia. So I was nervous about this pregnancy. This pregnancy turned out to be even worse. I had high blood pressure requiring medications, gestational diabetes, and placenta previa that led to about 5 hospitalizations for severe bleeding. Throughout my pregnancy, my husband and I would get in fights. Sometimes he would start them, sometimes I would. My hormones were all over the place, and I was so uncomfortable. I gained about 50 pounds of just fluid and was incredibly swollen, so when we would fight, I would end up screaming pretty quickly. Instead of trying to de-escalate, knowing all the complications I was going through, my husband would start screaming back at me and escalate the situation. After the first few fights, I sat him down and told him that I needed him to de-escalate these situations because the extra stress from him screaming at me could hurt me and the baby, especially given all the medical issues I was having. He needed to be the calm presence for his very pregnant and hormonal wife. He would say he understands but then go right back to yelling. Flash forward to 30 weeks pregnant, we have another screaming match before I leave for work. I ended up texting him later and saying if anything happens to me and the baby, it's on him for continuing to escalate fights with his hormonal wife with a high-risk pregnancy. Later that day, I had a placental abruption. Luckily, I work in a hospital and got to the ED in time. I was on the phone with my husband and had just enough time to tell him that I was hemorrhaging and I was going into the OR now. My husband headed to the hospital from work. I almost passed away. Though everything was fuzzy at the time because I was in and out of consciousness, I have since gotten flashbacks to things that were said by the doctors and staff during my emergency C-section, and it is scary to know how close I came to passing away. I'm in the medical field, so I knew all the terminology they were using to describe the situation. When my husband got to the hospital and saw me, his initial reaction was being annoyed that I didn't give him more information on the phone. I tried to explain that I was basically crashing at the time I called, but he was still cold. He only started being kind when I started to cry and the nurse walked in. He was pretty good in the initial postpartum period, bringing food to the hospital, helping around the house. Our son was in the NICU for 6 weeks, and we would switch off spending time with him and time with our toddler at home. Things were okay until my baby blues didn't go away. I was starting to get really depressed. I didn't want to hurt myself, but I kept thinking that I wouldn't really care if I just passed away. I never asked for help, but this postpartum depression was so bad that I finally went to my husband and asked for help. I told him how I was feeling, and I didn't know what to do. His response was to tell me, "I don't know how this is different from you or normally," and then proceeded to give me a list of things he didn't like about me. I was so depressed that I didn't even get mad at the time. I just realized I was on my own and found different resources to actually help. I felt back to normal about 4 weeks later. Since then, my husband and I have not been good. I have been trying to talk to him for months about how he treated me during that vulnerable time and how upset it makes me. For months, I have tried to get him to understand how damaging what he did was to me. When I try to discuss, he either ignores me, insults me, makes excuses, or degrades me. I have tried talking to him calmly, yelling, crying. Nothing gets through to him. Yesterday, after months of trying to get him to realize what he did to me and take accountability and apologize, I realized I have had enough. I told him that if he can't see how awful he was to me during and after my pregnancy when I needed him the most, I can't be with him anymore. I mentioned I am considering filing for divorce. While I love him, I feel like I will always resent him for what he did to me, especially since he has been so awful to me the last few months when all I have been trying to do is get him to take accountability so I can move on. I also don't trust that he will be there for me in the future since he wasn't there for me during and after my pregnancy. In fact, he made life harder. Later that night, I got a quick "I'm sorry" before he walked to bed. The next day, he assumed since he apologized, I would change my mind about the divorce and forgive him. I told him that a late-night apology doesn't really mean much after months of him being so mean to me by ignoring, insulting, and degrading me because I kept begging for him to take accountability for what he did so we could move on. He is now angry at me because he apologized just like I asked, and I still want a divorce. So, am I the butthole for still resenting my husband and wanting a divorce despite his apology?